What is going on, everybody? Welcome into day number 2 of FanDuel Fantasy Live Q&A. That is our new daily live show right here on the FanDuel YouTube and Twitch pages, getting you set for that day's slate of MLB DFS. If you were not with us yesterday, as a reminder, this is going to be a daily show we are doing every weekday right here at the same place, same time, 4 p.m. Eastern to get you set for that day's slate of MLB DFS. So make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page, the FanDuel Twitch page, wherever you're consuming this. Make sure you are subscribed. And if you have any questions about that night's slate, feel free to prompt them in, and I'll try to get you as many of those as I can to get you set for that night. But we can kind of go into the more basic premise today, because yesterday there were just 2 games, and one of them happened to be interrupted by rain. Today, it's an 11-game slate. We're playing things pretty straight here, and we can actually have a full regular discussion about MLB DFS. When we look at this slate for tonight, you've got a lot of good, really good pitching options here. Justin Verlander, I like quite a bit at 11-2, but he's not my favorite. I am gravitating towards Shane Bieber as my cash game pitcher for tonight. I think that the matchup is solid against the Royals. He gives up a lot of hard contact, and that's not going to change because he's Shane Bieber. But I think that the strikeout and the walk number is good enough where I don't care as much about it. So Bieber definitely, I think, where I'm going in cash, definitely I think is the most committal term we could possibly go with there. If you want to go a little bit lower, though, I think that's actually pretty permissible for this slate. You've got a couple of options down here. They're actually right here in the same zone. Brandon Woodruff is $8,700. Lance Lynn is $83. Lynn is my favorite option. When we talked about this morning, we were in a situation where the total in that game was 9.5. It is now down to 8.5, and I think that's appropriate. So things coming down there. Lance Lynn, I think definitely an option at 83, which brings us to our first question here from Alvin White. Alvin is asking, what are your favorite 4 Boston bats? And if you were a solo shot listener this morning, you know that Boston is my favorite stack for today. Trying to remember if Boston's lineup had been released. Okay, so it is out. Andrew Benintendi's batting leadoff, and Tommy Milone is a lefty. Andrew Benintendi, also a lefty. But when you pull up Andrew Benintendi's numbers from last year, he was actually pretty good against lefties, and I don't really care about the results. I'm only talking about his peripheral stats, because if you're looking at, let's see, 188 plate appearances for Benintendi, the WRC plus in that time does not matter. What we care about are these 2 numbers here, the hard hit rate and the fly ball rate. Those 2 numbers will stabilize a lot more quickly. And I think that is the area we want to turn to when trying to find out if a hitter is good against that handedness. So Benintendi, last year, a 43% hard hit rate against lefties and a 40% fly ball rate. So Alvin, I think if you're like, let's say you want to go with Justin Verlander, let's say Bieber actually, because Bieber's a little bit cheaper, a little bit more obtainable if you're going with Boston. Bieber 10-2 rather, and Benintendi not all that expensive at $2,700. So I'm actually going to put Benintendi in there first. I refreshed this page too soon, so we don't have the updated order in there. But I think that Benintendi is going to be a big start of my Boston stacks, even though he is a lefty. Obviously, you want to get guys like JD Martinez, Rafael Devers, and Xander Bogaerts in there, but that's not always super easy, especially when you're going up for a guy like Bieber or like Verlander. But here is where we see a couple of value plays. Kevin Pillar and Christian Vazquez, Michael Chavis. All those guys are right-handed batters who are at least, they've got something going against lefties. Chavis last year didn't have the best numbers, 33% strikeout rate against lefties. Obviously, that's not super attractive, but Pillar, really good numbers, super low strikeout rate, can definitely get behind that. Vazquez, not a fly ball hitter, which is not something I enjoy all that much. But I guess he's 42%. I was looking at Verdugo there, but 42% for Vazquez, not that bad. So I think, Alvin, to answer your question about Boston, it kind of depends on where you're going to pitcher. If you need the savings, I think that all of Benintendi, Vazquez, and Pillar are very much in play. If you're going with Lance Lynn, you can get to JD Martinez very easily. So I think for me, given that I am going with Shane Bieber as my pitcher for tonight, I'm going to wind up going with Christian Vazquez here. Probably going to jump down to Pillar, who is $2,400, and then see if I can get to Martinez, which I should be able to. $3,400 left. per batter, yeah, I think that's probably where I'd wind up. But overall, I don't think you can go that wrong with Boston. If you want to put Chavis in there instead of one of the other value plays, I think that's totally okay too. So Alvin, basically any of the righties plus Benintendi are where I'm looking here for the Red Sox. Rafael Devers also similar to Benintendi, an option despite being a lefty. Kimo is asking Eovaldi in the Boston, Houston, and stack. Eovaldi is not someone I like that much. I know it was a small sample, but you look back to last year and Eovaldi's numbers as a starter weren't good. 22% strikeout rate, 13% walk rate. He's kind of starting out of obligation for today for Boston because they have literally nobody else who is healthy and left standing. So Eovaldi, great matchup. Definitely we should always value matchups, but I prefer to go the talent route, and the talent says to me, not super into Eovaldi. I think, again, if you want to go cheaper, Lance Lynn is the way I'd go there. Question here from Yevgeny asking about Kevin Pillar in cash. Yes, I think that is okay for sure. $2,400 for a guy batting fifth in my favorite stack of the day. Platoon advantage, good park. I think it's like 77 degrees, 78 degrees, 77 degrees in Boston. So I'll totally take that. So yeah, Kevin Pillar in cash for me for sure. How do you feel about the Padres stack, specifically Machado, Tatis, Pham, and Will Myers? All right, so the Padres are facing Madison Bumgarner. I'm not super into it. Bumgarner last year actually had some interesting numbers. The sample I have on Bumgarner here is from his final 18 starts. He was changing up his pitch usage, threw a couple more curveballs in this span. 4.05 skill interactive ERA there, 25% strikeout rate, 5% walk rate, and a 41% hard hit rate. Now, the justification, Mateo, you could have for going with Bumgarner is that he does, or going with the Padres, that he does allow a lot of hard contact. And as you can see here, this Padres team's pretty good against lefties, and especially the guys you mentioned there, they can all hit lefties. So I think you can justify it. The reason that I am not super drawn towards it is that I think that there are other options that I like a little bit more. So I think that that's why I'm not quite going there, just because I have a lot of respect for Madison Bumgarner. That Padres team is definitely willing to strike out, a 25% strikeout rate. I don't hate it, Mateo. I definitely think that it's an option, just not one that I will be doing personally. All right. Question here from Robert Ewing. Who do you think will take the Central? Thinking my Cincinnati Reds. Well, I was in Illinois where we can mobile sports bet. I took the White Sox. I know that's not the Central you were talking about, but I'm a Twins fan, but I took the White Sox. So don't tell my family. But I decided to go White Sox there. The National League side, it's pretty wide open. I don't think the Reds are a bad option, but it's hard to pick a favorite there. Let's see here. Brad Singer, any or better stack tonight, Boston or Cleveland? Brad, the answer to your question is yes. I will take both, please. In the solo shot, I went through 3 different stacks I like for today. I think that Boston was number 1. Cleveland was number 3, and that's not like it's not saying that I don't like Cleveland. It's more so they just happen to fit there because they've got a lot of value. Refreshing here so we can see the actual order here for the Cleveland bats, because they wound up having some really good value in there. I know Jordan Luplow is batting, I think, 6th for them tonight, and that's pretty solid. So I think that Cleveland and Boston are both near the top of the stacking considerations for tonight. The other team I discussed in there was the Dodgers, and I do think that they're also pretty intriguing. So if we look at, if this eventually refreshes, as my internet is apparently going a little bit slower, this Cleveland team is going to have good options for us. So they're very similar to Boston, where you can go with the studs like Francisco Lindor and Jose Ramirez, and I definitely want to do that, but you've also got value options, so you are not cramping your style with your pitcher by stacking Cleveland's offense. So I think that that's why I am really into the Cleveland team. Looking at their batting order here, Franmil Reyes has disgusting power. He's $2,700 and batting 5th. Not a big Cesar Hernandez guy, but Domingo Santana is batting 7th. And then we mentioned Jordan Luplow. He's batting 6th. The perpetual question I have with Luplow is if he will leave for a pinch hitter, because that did happen pretty often last year when he would start against lefty. But when he's in there, 46% hard hit rate last year against lefties and a 44% fly ball rate. until he leaves the game, he's probably going to hit the ball pretty freaking hard. So I definitely think that that's a way I want to go. So Cleveland, to answer your question, Brad, I think that they're right on par with Boston. If I had to pick one, I might wind up going Cleveland. I don't know. It's pretty close. Either way, I think that you really can't go wrong there. Question here from Nicholas Carey. Okay, so good question here. How are you handling the new stadium in Texas? So for those of you who don't know, Texas is no longer in their old park. Their old park was an outdoor stadium, and it was hot because we want hitters in hot, humid situations. That was always the case in Texas because, shockingly, it's hot and humid in Texas. Now they're moving to a stadium that is indoors or has a retractable roof, and it's 94 degrees for today. My assumption, I was searching for this on Twitter earlier today. It was a while ago, so they may have announced this since then, but I couldn't find a definitive answer if they were shutting the roof for tonight. My guess is that they will. And assuming that they do, I would bet that it winds up being pretty similar to Houston. So I'm actually going to give you the actual answer here, Nicholas. If you go to my sheet and look at the park factors here for that Texas game, I have it being identical to what the Houston park is at Minute Maid. So I know that the allure of Texas is always good, but the problem is when they shut that roof, you kind of lose the big upsides of having that stadium. So I think that's a good question. I'd probably put it about neutral, Nicholas, between pitchers and hitters. But I think if you need an analogous way to think about it, I would go with Houston there. Yevgeny asking, Jay Bruce playable in the 7-hole for $2,100. They are facing Sandy Alcantara. Alcantara is a righty. Alcantara not overpowering by any means. 4.49 skill interactive ERA over the final 10 starts last year. 21% strikeout rate. Did a decent job of limiting hard contact, which is interesting for sure. So I don't think that Jay Bruce is a bad option. I think that there are other options I like more. I think that's probably the most representative way to phrase that. I don't think it's a bad option. They're just options that I like more. So Jay Bruce, if you need exactly $2,100, I think that's okay. The problem is if I have 22, I want to go Luplow. If I have 24, I want to go Kevin Pillar. It's just a really, really good night for value here on this slate. Question here from Robert Ewing on Facebook. What would be your best cash lineup for tonight? I mentioned this yesterday, but I'm not going to give out full lineups here just because that's kind of shady, and I don't want to do that. Also, I think that the better point of the show is to talk through the process and talk through where I'm thinking on different things. I already mentioned that I would go Shane Bieber in cash games, but I think that there are multiple options you can take with your pitcher in cash games. You could pay up for Verlander. I'm not super intrigued with doing so just because he's changing up his mechanics from last year because he's had some injuries, specifically with the groin area, and I don't know if he's fully stretched out. Whereas with Shane Bieber and Lance Lynn, I feel better about them pitching deeper into the game. So if I'm filling out a cash game lineup, I want to have a better idea that pitcher's going to go deeper in the game. And at least for me, I think the odds that Bieber and Lynn go deeper are higher than the odds for Verlander. So that's why I wind up going there. And I think that it's nice to have a cheaper option at pitcher for cash games because a lot of times that's not going to be the case. Usually for me, it's spend up no matter what in a cash game at pitcher. But I think tonight with Lance Lynn being $83, he is at home. He is facing the Rockies, who are not a good offense outside of Coors. Lance Lynn, for his final, I think, 20-something starts last year after he started to emphasize his four-seam fastball more. 3.57 skill interactive ERA with a 30% strikeout rate. The Rockies against righties, based on their current active roster, 82 WRC plus. That's not good. So I think you can justify going down to Lance Lynn for cash games, but I think I'm probably going to wind up on Bieber just because all the value between Boston and Cleveland allows me to do so pretty easily. But a couple options there for cash games at pitcher. I think that Cleveland and Boston probably the best stacks for cash games. I would put Houston in consideration for cash game stacks if you are looking at this. If you have the ability to spend up for a team like Houston, and I think that's the Dodgers also in play. Hopefully we get their lineup here pretty soon. Question here from Mateo. Which first and second baseman has a good matchup? So let's go here. Check out first and second base over on FanDuel. Max Muncy does. He's facing Jeff Samardzija. I don't know if they ever actually officially announced that, but pretty sure it's Samardzija. He allows a lot of hard contact, doesn't get strikeouts. That's exactly what you want for a cash game. So if you have the salary to get to Max Muncy, I definitely think that is an okay route to go. Carlos Santana is a good matchup. I don't tend to use him all that often against lefties because he is very much so a more powerful hitter against righties. Last year against lefties, just 28% fly ball rate. So I think you could go with Santana if you wanted to. Probably not my favorite guy personally for tonight. So I think that he's an option, just not my favorite. And if you want to save some salary, again, I do think that Vasquez is in play for cash. He's $2,700, but good numbers against lefties last year, batting sixth, good park, good matchup. So Muncy, if you had the salary, if you don't, I'd drop down to Vasquez. As far as second base goes, again, I'm not super into Cesar Hernandez at $2,500 because the power is not there, but I think you could justify it in a cash game just because he is batting first. He is in a really good matchup. It's a lineup I like. I just don't like the profile of the player all that much. So I think that Hernandez might want to be the guy, even though I'm not super sold on his profile overall. So I think that's my main thoughts about those options. Bill is asking, how do you feel about Frankie Montas? Montas is awesome as a pitcher. I hate his matchup with all of my heart. He is facing the Angels. Angels, with their current active roster, Anthony Rendon is on this current active roster. Obviously, he's not going to play tonight, but he is in this equation. So keep in mind that you can downgrade these numbers a bit, but a 109 WRC plus against righties, 41% hard hit rate, 38% fly ball rate, and not a lot of strikeouts. So I love Montas, the individual pitcher. I love the fact that it's just 55 degrees in Oakland. That's the coldest temperature on the slate by 14 degrees. It's a great park for pitchers, even without that. So I love Montas, the pitcher, like his situation, hate his matchup. So I think I'd rather go up to Lance Lynn for tonight. I'm one of the cheaper guys. And again, Brandon Woodruff, definitely someone you could turn to as well. Home run pick for tonight. I would probably go with JD Martinez. I know we're not going super contrarian here, but we'll go JD Martinez. Facing Tommy Malone, facing a lefty at home, good weather. I think that's definitely where I would go there. Twitch question here from Yash. Can we talk about the Cardinal stack? We could. And I think that when you look at the weather for St. Louis for today, it's 88 degrees. That is the warmest temperature on the entire slate. And as mentioned, we want to go at warm weather. My concern is that Joe Musgrove might be kind of good. So Musgrove has been weird. He's been this dude who, I'm guessing I'm not the only one, but I've been duped before. We'll put it that way. I've bought into Joe Musgrove before it was time to buy into Joe Musgrove, and it's bit me. However, last year, it seemed like the Pirates seemed to be more willing to let their pitchers emphasize their best pitches, and it sounds like Musgrove thinks they're going to do that this year as well. If you look at over his final 7 starts, it's a small sample, but I'm comfortable with that if I'm looking at the right stats. 3.73 skill and active ERA, 26% strikeout rate, and just a 31% hard hit rate allowed. The hard hit rate is harder to trust in such a small sample, but it's better to be good there than to be bad. And the Cardinals' active roster, it's kind of okay. 94 WRC plus, and the way you find that, I should clarify that here. Go to FanGraphs, look at the team's stats, look at 2019. Make sure you click this button for the active roster. That is a huge, huge, huge helper, especially early in the year where so many players are on new teams. So many things are different. You want to know what a team looks like now, not what they looked like last year. So I would highly, highly recommend this. Just go to FanGraphs, and I think it's under the teams page, team batting stats for 2019. Then make sure you click the active roster thing. That is such a huge crutch for DFS. And I think that when you combine the Cardinals' numbers with the fact that Musgrove pretty good, and we have reason to believe he could be even better this year, I'm okay avoiding the Cardinals. I think that I get why you're there because Musgrove's overall numbers last year weren't great, especially for opening day. But for me personally, I'm okay looking elsewhere. Evgeny is asking, do you typically try to get 3 to 4 man stacks in cash? I try to get 4 man stacks whenever I can. We had a piece this year. I did a podcast on it, and Kenyatta Storin, one of our staff writers at numberFire, did a piece about stacking. And if you look at that, FanDuel is nice enough to give us this data, but when you look at last year's rosters on FanDuel and the average score by stack, all the best scores the best average scores came from teams that had 4-player stacks. So if you're looking for cash game rosters, you want to amp up that average score as much as you can. So if I can amplify my average score by stacking 4 players from one team, I think that that's a good way to go. So I think that to answer your question, Yevgeny, I want to go with a 4-person stack wherever I can, and whether cash or tournaments, I'm going to be stacking for sure. Alvin updated here that Globe Life Park will close the roof. Thank you, Alvin, for that. And again, I think that puts it similar to Houston, so roughly neutral from a park factor perspective, which is better than it was before, even better for Lance Lynn at $8,300. Alvin asked, any change to your top stacks from this morning? Not really. I think that I've gotten more fond of Boston just because the salary savers like Pilar make it a lot easier to stack them than I thought it was going to be. So let's mess around with this for a second here because I'm curious. You're going to bear with me here as I do something for my own amusement. But let's go with Justin. I toggled this before. All right, so let's go to Justin Verlander as my pitcher, which leaves me with probably like 29.75 left for all of my hitters. That's not a big number. However, as mentioned, we have got Christian Vasquez. We've got Michael Chavis. We've got Kevin Pillar as these salary savers. Actually, you could put Benintendi in there too. You can stack Boston without spending more than $2,700 for any of your players. You could hypothetically do that. Now, that means you're not getting JD Martinez, and that's kind of a bummer, but I think that that's okay. If it gets you access to Verlander and you like Verlander a lot, even if we go like with this, that's 3,000 left. I can make that work pretty easily. So I would say Boston became more attractive to me. They did not change. They just got a little bit. I got more intrigued by them because of the value play, especially with Pilar being there. Bill is asking, is Benintendi a good look for outfielder? We talked about this at the top of the show, Bill, but I think that he is, because when you look at Tommy Milone last year, his strikeout rate against lefties, this is from a sample when I think it's like his final 14 or so appearances. This is all based on pitch mixes. Like if a guy starts to emphasize a pitch more down the stretch, that's a sample I want to look at. Looking at the most relevant sample for Malone, his strikeout rate against lefties was like 21%, and he allowed a good amount of hard contact. So in general, I'm very okay going with left-handed batters against Tommy Milone, which is good for Rafael Devers, but it's also good for Andrew Benintendi, who actually had better batted ball numbers last year against lefties than Devers did. 43% hard hit rate, 40% fly ball rate. So I guess my hope, not sure this will actually happen, but my hope is that people will forego Benintendi because he's a lefty. Maybe they gravitate towards Pilar to save that salary, but I do think Benintendi is a good play. He doesn't profile that well from a DFS perspective usually because he's not a huge home run guy. He'll get some steals, which is good for sure. But I think that doesn't profile as being a huge home run guy. So normally I'm not a huge Benintendi person for DFS. I think today's a little bit different. And I think that he will be a core play for me and someone I actively try to be overweight on when I'm stacking these Boston stacks. I think that it's pretty good day to go lefty on lefty with Benintendi. Sal says, I guess, all in on Musgrove. You know, Sal, like, I don't hate it. Honestly, like, I think that, I don't love it because I think there are so many good options for today. I don't want to force it too much with a guy like Joe Musgrove. But again, good numbers last year when he was allowed to emphasize that curveball, low walk rate, not a lot of hard contact. The Cardinals do strike out, 24% strikeout rate. The counterpoints are he is not going to be as big of a strikeout guy as Lance Lynn, who's about 30% strikeout rate. Brandon Woodruff is 28%. That's even with his increased slider usage over the latter part of the season. He's still at a 28% strikeout rate, basically allowing no hard contact. And I'd rather pay up for guys like Shane Bieber. So I don't think that Musgrove is a bad process play. I just think there are other options that I like more. So he's kind of similar to the Jay Bruce dilemma, where not a bad option. I just happen to like other options more. So if you want to go Musgrove, I'm not going to talk you out of it. Just not a person I'm looking to use for tonight. That is all the time that we have for today here on this FanDuel Fantasy Live Q&A. Once again, quick rapid fire, 25 minutes to answer any questions you have as lineups come out each day. Back again on Monday as we're doing this just every weekday. We have the FanDuel Fantasy Live Q&A. That goes live at 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube and Twitch pages. And we also have the Solo Shot, which is our daily podcast. That's recorded live on YouTube every day, 9 a.m. Eastern, every weekday, I should say. So a lot of incentive for you to subscribe to the FanDuel YouTube page to get that and this Twitch page just for this, and the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed for our MLB podcast, which goes up every weekday around 9:30 or so. You can find it there. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for on the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to all of you for tuning in and asking all the really good questions. I thought that you sounded like you're prepared. Really appreciate that. Asking good, intelligent questions. Shout out to all of you. Good luck for tonight. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you again on Monday. This has been the FanDuel Fantasy Live Q&A right here on the FanDuel YouTube page.